a good man and my friend.
You bet.
David Nelson, he's from right here in Old Dubuque, and but he lives in Tennessee, and you can tell him anything you want. But,
Yeah. The other day I had my physical.
uh-oh,
Went and saw old Doc, and he told me, he says, everything looks pretty good. You got any questions? And I told him, I said, well, I'm in pretty good shape, but I think my wife Trixie is going deaf. He says, look, rather than bringing her in here and running some kind of expensive test, let's try this at home first. So I did. I'm in the living room. She's in the kitchen. She's got her back to me, and she's peeling vegetables. So I yelled out to her, what's for dinner? Nothing. So I walked up behind her a little bit, and I go, what's for dinner? Still nothing. I thought, oh, God, she's going to have a hearing test and probably hearing aids. I got right up behind her, and I yelled it again. She turns around, and she goes, for the third time, you deaf old coot, it's meatloaf. So I'm going back to see my doc next week. I think I might be the one that has to have hearing aids. Back in the mountains in East Tennessee where I live, in the Smoky Mountains, there's three kinds of animals to watch out for. One is, of course, the black bear. The other is the copperhead. And the last one is yellow jackets. And yellow jackets will build their nest under the ground. Now, three of us were sitting around over at Puddin's house one night, and we were talking about scary things that happened to us out there in the mountains. And Gordy said he was fishing in a little river right outside of Townsend where we live. And he was done, and he was going back up to his truck, and he was climbing the bank, and his arms fell into a nest of yellow jackets right into the bank. And they chased him back to the truck, and he was getting stung all over. And he jumped in the truck, and they were following him in there, and Puddin and I said, yeah, that's pretty scary. Then Puddin told us about the time he was cleaning up around the barn, and he got everything all straightened up, and the dogs were going nuts, and it was over by a piece of plywood, a big piece of sheet of plywood there. So he got the hoe, and he lifted it up and looked, and there was a whole bunch of copperheads. So he went and got his shotgun, and he shot all these poisonous snakes. And Gordy and I said, yeah, it's pretty scary. Sure enough, we all agreed. Well, I told him about time that I did something stupid. When you go hiking, you never want to go by yourself out in the mountains, and you never want to be between a mother and her cub, a black bear. I came around this corner, and there was a cub, and I looked around. I didn't see the mother anywhere, and we were sitting around, Gordy, Puddin and I, and we were sitting around the campfire like this, and they said, I turned around and saw the mother and said, what'd you do? And what'd the bear do? And I stood up and went, roar! And I looked at them both and I said, I messed my pants. And they said, we probably would have too. I said, no, just now when I stood up and went, roar! I'm going to be back in Dubuque. July 31st, we're putting on a show out at Happy's, and it's open for everybody. It's $6 a head, and Mississippi String Band will be performing for about 45 minutes, and I'll be doing my cowboy comedy show for about another 45 minutes, and we're going to do basically a 2-hour show. As for people from a community that I started on Facebook called Dubuque, Iowa Roots, but that's where the origin of it is, but it's for anybody that's in the Dubuque land area that wants to stop out to Happy's and have a good night, a fellowship and some entertainment and such. And I am the Cowboy Poet Laureate of Tennessee, and I've been up here in Dubuque promoting the show and also some books that I have online, and one of them is called The Shade Tree Choir. And if you haven't heard the song that was created by Steve Williams and Mick down in Nashville, Mick Yeager, you might want to check that out. It's out there on the web now, and it's a pretty cool song they wrote, named after the book that I wrote. And I have other books also about Dubuque. Also, this Friday night, I wrote a short story a while back and entered it in a contest here in Dubuque, and I was notified in the last few weeks that I won first place for my short story. Nice. So I'll be at the Dubuque, thank you. Yeah, I'll be at the Dubuque Art Museum or Museum of Art.
Museum of Art.
Dubuque Museum of Art starts at 6 o'clock Friday night. It's free, and there are many, many writers from the Dubuque area and from America who are coming back to Dubuque for that event. and all kinds of stories from poetry to longer stories and as well as short stories. So if you are into the literary work, so to speak, come out or just come out and meet me and say hello. I've had a great time since I've been here for the last 6 weeks, and now I'm heading back to the mountains of Tennessee, to the hollers as we call it. Mm-hmm. But I'll leave you with this last story, and this one's a true one. Now there's two things that a cowboy wants to rope off a horse. One's a coyote and the other one's a bear. We don't have many opportunities because there's too many trees to rope a coyote there in the mountains of Tennessee, but bears are all over the place. I pull into Donnie's place last fall and he's jumping up and down. He goes, "You're not going to believe what I roped today." I said, "What?" He says, "A bear." I said, "You did not." He said, "I did, right off my horse. I roped that baby and dallied it off," and Debbie, his wife, comes out and goes, "Did Donnie tell you what he roped?" I go, "Is that true?" "Yeah, that's true." Well, I was over there camping with him for the weekend, and it was just driving me nuts because he kept barbing me about how he roped a bear and I never had. Well, that morning, it was one of those typical foggy mornings in the holler, and the fog just sits on the ground, and if you ride up high enough in the mountains, you can have a tremendous view looking down at all the fog down below. And they were sound asleep in their tent, and I got up, and I said, "I'm going to go see if I can find me a bear." Now in the springtime, when the bears come out of hibernation, they'll be eating like 23 hours a day. They don't pay attention to anything because they lose 60% of their body weight when they're hibernating during the winter. So I snuck the horse off and saddled him up and everything, and I walked him out of camp and then finally mounted. And I came up over the ridge, and I was coming down another ridge, and my horse sensed it long before I saw it. And my horse's ears went up, and I could feel her bow up a little bit, and I had to bump her with my spurs. And I untied my rope because I knew something was coming. And we came down over this hill. There was a bear, had her butt to us, and she was eating termites and bugs out of this log, and I thought, "Oh, this is awesome." So I made a big loop in my rope, and I threw it, and I hooked that bear around the neck and put him on my horn, and twisted him like this, and I had to really spur my horse. The horse took off down this lane. The bear's tumbling and tossing and rolling. Finally, eventually, he's in sync with me and my horse. And I thought, this is pretty cool. And I'm looking back, and the bear's running back behind me. And I said, "What am I going to do with this horse, or this bear?" I never did ask Donnie what did he do with his bear. I saw an idea, or as we say in Tennessee, an ideal hit me. So I'm going to drag this bear back into camp, make a whole bunch of noise, wake them all up, and I'm going to let that rope go, and there's going to be a big wreck down there by those tents. I wasn't 100 yards down that path, and the bear started coming up behind my horse. Now, bear claws will stick out like a cat, and then they'll recess, but when they want to climb something, these claws come out. The bear is climbing up the rump of my horse. My horse is going nuts. She's kicking back like this, doing what she's supposed to do, going around a circle. The rope is everywhere. I pulled my knife out, finally cut the rope because it was going around my legs like this. The bear got up on the horse, so I had no choice but to dive off, and a big rock broke my fall. Also broke my glasses and busted the heel off my boot. It was a terrible wreck. I'm lying on the ground. The bear took off up into the fog, riding on the back of that horse. I said, "Oh, God, what am I going to tell Donnie? I gave a perfectly good saddle and rope and horse to a bear." I'm limping down the road trying to figure out what I'm going to do and rubbing my forehead. Suddenly I heard something behind me. I turned and looked, and there's that bear riding my horse, and he's got a loop built, my rope going to rope me. And that's a true story. So there you go.
Thank you.
So see ya.